Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a look at something that's probably sitting in a file somewhere in your house, just gathering dust.
Oh, yeah.
Your Regency Oaks Neighborhood Association documents.
Right.
We're going to call it RONA for short.
Okay.
And we're going to be diving deep into your rights and responsibilities when it comes to RONA, especially when it comes to those sometimes dreaded dues,
Yeah.
deciphering budgets, and navigating those all-important governing documents.
It's important stuff.
You might be surprised to learn just how much power you actually have as a homeowner.
You really do have a lot more power than you might think. You sent over your RONA bylaws, Declaration of Protective Covenants, Articles of Incorporation, and even the living standards.
Wow.
A real treasure trove.
Yeah.
These aren't just boring legal papers.
Right.
They're the roadmap to understanding how your community operates.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It seems like one of the biggest pain points for RONA members is those dues increases.
Of course.
It's a common concern for homeowners everywhere, especially in today's economy.
For sure. What's fascinating here is that RONA's Declaration of Protective Covenants actually gives members a powerful tool.
Oh.
The ability to disapprove proposed budget increases.
Wait, really? So it's not just the board deciding and everyone else has to go along with it?
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
A majority of homeowners can actually reject a proposed budget increase.
Wow.
In RONA's case, that magic number is 116 votes. That's a lot of power residing in the hands of the community.
116 votes. Got it. But I imagine there's a specific process for flexing that muscle. I'm guessing these legal documents aren't exactly light reading.
You're right, they can be pretty dense. But that's where we come in Article 4, Section 3 of the Declaration of Protective Covenants lays out the disapproval process. Think of it as a system of checks and balances to keep things fair and transparent.
So walk me through this. Let's say our listener gets that notice about a potential dues increase. What are the first steps they should take?
First, don't panic.
Yeah, okay.
Grab your highlighter and really dive into that proposed budget. What line items stand out to you? Are there any areas that seem unclear or raise red flags for you?
Right.
Then mark your calendar for the meeting where the budget will be discussed. This is your chance to voice those questions directly to the board and hear their reasoning.
So engagement is key. Don't just sit back and let things happen. Get involved in the process.
Absolutely. Now, you might find that your concerns are shared by other homeowners.
Right.
That's when you start talking to your neighbors, sharing what you've uncovered, and seeing if there's enough collective concern to potentially reach that 116 vote threshold.
It's like that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sometimes you have to make a little noise to get things moving. But what if the board isn't exactly laying out a clear path for feedback or voting? What can homeowners do then?
That's where a little assertiveness comes in.
Okay.
It's all about advocating for transparency. You have a right to understand how your money's being spent.
For sure.
To help with that, we've put together a sample email template that you can use to communicate with the property manager and the board. It lays out a clear request for clarification and a more transparent budget process.
We'll definitely include that template in the show notes for our listener.
And here's a pro tip. When you send that email, always copy Coral Driscoll at driscolls.com.
Okay.
He's an advocate who can provide support and guidance during this process.
Now, we've been focusing a lot on budgets, but these governing documents cover much more than just dues, right?
Yeah.
What other rights do RONA members have that they might not even be aware of?
That's a great question. The Declaration of Protective Covenants and Bylaws lay out a whole range of important information.
Yeah.
For example, Article 4, Section 6 of the Declaration deals with what happens if dues aren't paid.
Oh, right.
It outlines remedies for non-payment and the process for liens.
Okay.
It's not something anyone wants to think about,
Right.
but it's crucial to understand the potential consequences.
So it's not just about knowing your rights, but also understanding your responsibilities as a homeowner.
Absolutely. And those responsibilities tie into decision-making as well. Article 2, Section 7 of the bylaws covers voting procedures, ensuring everything is fair and above board when it comes to elections.
Okay.
And those all-important budget decisions we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty technical ground here. I'll admit, even I got a little lost in the legal jargon at times. I know these documents can be really intimidating for the average homeowner. Can you give us a simple English breakdown of what each key document covers?
Sure. Let's start with the Declaration of Protective Covenants. Think of it as your community's constitution.
Okay.
It outlines the big picture rules, who can be a member, what voting rights you have, who's responsible for maintaining common property, and how those assessments are calculated.
Right.
It's the foundation for everything else.
So it sets the ground rules for how the community functions.
Yeah. Then we have the bylaws, which are like the operational manual.
Okay.
They get into the nitty-gritty details. When are the annual meetings? How do you call a special meeting, if needed? What's a proxy vote, and how many people need to be present for a vote to count?
Right.
That's what's called a quorum.
Okay, so the bylaws are the nuts and bolts of how the community runs day to day. What about the articles of incorporation? They sound pretty official.
They are. Remember, RONA is a nonprofit organization. These articles are like its birth certificate,
Oh, okay.
officially establishing its purpose, which is to serve the community. They also grant the association the power to manage assessments and maintain property.
You also mentioned something about limited liability for the directors. What does that mean exactly?
This is important because it means the individual board members aren't personally on the hook financially for the association's debts or legal issues. This protection allows them to make decisions that benefit the community as a whole without the fear of personal financial ruin.
That makes sense. I wouldn't want to volunteer for the board with that kind of pressure hanging over my head.
It's a big responsibility for sure. But remember, the Articles of Incorporation also emphasize transparency and accountability. Everything the association does must align with its stated purpose and the laws that govern nonprofits.
So it's not like the Wild West. There are rules and regulations in place to keep things in check.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, let's touch on those living standards. They sometimes get overlooked, but they play a big part in shaping the character of the community.
Yeah, I was wondering when we'd get to those. I'm picturing a long list of rules about what color you can paint your front door and how high your grass can be.
Well, it's more than just aesthetics. The living standards help maintain property values and create a sense of cohesion. They cover everything from patios and play equipment to landscaping and even things like holiday decorations.
So if I'm planning on putting up a giant inflatable Santa this year, I better check those living standards first.
You got it. But seriously, the living standards also lay out the procedures for dealing with violations. It's all about being fair and transparent. Every homeowner has the right to due process, meaning they'll be notified of any issues and have a chance to correct them before any penalties are imposed.
So no HOA ninjas sneaking around slapping fines on people in the dead of night.
Not quite. It's a much more structured and transparent process than that. And ultimately, it's about ensuring that the community remains a pleasant and desirable place for everyone to live.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've gone through the declaration, the bylaws, the articles of incorporation, and even though sometimes mysterious living standards, that's a lot to digest.
It is. But remember, knowledge is power. Understanding these documents empowers you to actively participate in your community and advocate for your interests.
That's a powerful message, and I think a lot of people will be surprised to learn just how much influence they actually have.
Exactly. It's not about blindly accepting decisions. It's about understanding the rules of the game and using them to shape your community in a positive way.
This has been a fascinating deep dive so far. We'll be back in a moment to talk about how to put this knowledge into action, how to become a truly empowered RONA member.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been digging through those RONA documents, and I'm starting to see them in a whole new light.
Oh, yeah.
It's not all just legalese and fine print. There's some real power hidden in those pages.
It is. It's like uncovering a secret code.
Yeah.
We've already talked about how 116 votes can swing a budget decision, and we've touched on things like Ludians and voting procedures, but there's so much more to explore.
I'm ready to keep digging. What other nuggets of wisdom can we unearth from these documents?
Well, for starters, the declaration specifies that any special assessments exceeding $300 require community approval. That's a big one.
Yeah, so it's not just the regular dues that are subject to scrutiny.
Right.
Homeowners have a voice when it comes to any major financial decision the association makes. Exactly. And this ties back to something we were discussing earlier, the division of responsibility between the association and individual homeowners.
Right.
The declaration is very clear about what RONA is responsible for maintaining, like common areas, versus what falls on the shoulders of individual homeowners.
Right. So if a tree falls in the common area, it's RONA's problem. But if it's on my property,
Yeah, exactly.
well,
I call it.
I better call a tree trimmer.
That's the idea. Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
let's revisit those bylaws. We talked about annual meetings, but they also outline the process for calling special meetings.
Right.
Did you know that the president or even a group of members representing 25% of the association votes can call a special meeting.
Hold on. So if enough residents are concerned about an issue, they can basically force a discussion outside of the regular meeting schedule.
They can. That's pretty impressive.
That is?
It is. It's the power of collective action in action. It ensures that important issues don't get swept under the rug.
Right.
And once you're at a meeting, whether it's an annual one or a special one, it's crucial to understand how the voting process works. The bylaws cover things like proxies, which allow you to designate someone to vote on your behalf if you can't be there.
Okay.
And the concept of a quorum, which is the minimum number of members needed for a vote to be valid.
Ah, so even if you can't make it to a meeting, you can still have your voice heard through a proxy.
Exactly.
And that quorum thing prevents decisions from being made by just a handful of people.
It does. It's all about ensuring fair representation and preventing a small group from hijacking the decision-making process. There's strength in numbers.
I'm starting to see a theme here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we've talked about the Declaration, the bylaws. What about those articles of incorporation?
Okay.
It always sounds so formal and intimidating.
They are important, but they're not as scary as they sound.
Okay.
Remember, RONA is a nonprofit organization, and these articles are like its official charter.
Right.
They spell out its purpose, which is to serve the community.
Okay.
And granted the power to manage assessments and property.
You also mentioned limited liability for the directors. Can you break that down for me? Why is that important?
It's a crucial protection because it means the individual board members aren't personally liable for the association's debts or any legal issues that might arise.
Okay.
This allows them to make decisions in the best interest of the community without fearing personal financial ruin.
That makes a lot of sense. Serving on an HOA board is a lot of work, and I imagine it can be stressful at times. It's good to know those volunteers are protected.
It is. But the Articles of Incorporation also underscore the importance of transparency and accountability. Everything the association does must be in line with its stated purpose and comply with the laws that govern nonprofits.
So it's not a free-for-all. There are rules and regulations in place to keep things in check.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into RONA's governing documents, let's take a closer look at those living standards.
Right.
They often get overlooked, but they play a big role in shaping the character and feel of the community.
Yes, the living standards. Those are the ones that lay out all the rules about what you can and can't do on your property, right?
They do cover those things, but it's about more than just keeping things aesthetically pleasing. The living standards help maintain property values and create a cohesive community feel. They cover everything from patios and play equipment to landscaping and even things like holiday decorations.
So if I want to put up a massive inflatable snowman this winter, I better double check those living standards first.
You got it.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, the living standards also lay out the procedures for handling any violations. It's all about being fair and ensuring that everyone gets treated equally.
So if there's an issue, how does that usually play out?
It's a very structured process.
Okay.
It starts with a notice of the violation, giving the homeowner a chance to correct the issue.
Okay.
There are clear steps involved, and it's not about punishing people. It's about maintaining community standards.
So no rogue HOA enforcers hiding in the bushes, waiting to pounce on an unmowed lawn.
Definitely not. It's much more transparent and straightforward than that. And remember, these living standards are there for a reason.
Right.
They help maintain property values and create a sense of harmony within the community.
Okay, so we've gone through the Declaration, the bylaws, the Articles of Incorporation, and even those sometimes mysterious living standards. That's a lot to digest.
It is. But remember, knowledge is power. Understanding these documents empowers you to actively participate in your community and advocate for your interests.
That's a powerful message. And I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn just how much influence they actually have.
Exactly. It's not about blindly accepting decisions. It's about understanding the rules of the game and using them to shape your community in a positive way.
This has been a fascinating deep dive so far. We'll be back in a moment to talk about how to put this knowledge into action, how to become a truly empowered RONA member. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the ins and outs of those RONA governing documents.
Yeah, it really has been.
It's amazing how much information and power is packed into those pages.
It really is.
I have to admit, my head is spinning a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, especially if you're not used to dealing with this kind of legal language. I can imagine some of our listeners might be feeling a little overwhelmed right now.
It's totally understandable. It's like learning a new language.
Right.
But the good news is you don't have to become a legal expert to be an effective RONA member.
So for those listeners who are ready to roll up their sleeves and get involved, where do they even begin? It can all feel a bit daunting.
The first step is simple: connect with your neighbors.
Okay.
Remember, strength in numbers is key.
Right.
Start by striking up conversations with the folks on your street, sharing what you've learned about RONA's governing documents, and asking about their experience.
Right. It's all about building those relationships and creating a sense of community. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone in your concerns can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And once you've got a core group of like-minded neighbors, you can start strategizing. Maybe you want to focus on budget transparency, advocating for clearer communication from the board about how those dues are being spent.
Or maybe you're passionate about improving the community's green spaces. Like that park that's been in desperate need of some TLC.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having a group of engaged neighbors makes all the difference.
Yeah.
You can attend those RONA meetings together, share research and ideas, and even draft proposals for changes you'd like to see.
So it's like forming a mini coalition within the larger RONA community.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out to the board members directly.
Right.
Remember, they're your neighbors too, and most likely they want what's best for the community. A little open dialogue can go a long way.
But what if you encounter resistance? What if the board isn't receptive to your ideas or concerns?
That's where knowing your rights and that magic number of 116 votes comes in handy.
Right.
If you can rally enough support, you have the power to reject budget proposals or even call for those special meetings we talked about to address pressing issues.
So it's not about being confrontational. It's about being informed and empowered to advocate for positive change.
Exactly. And here's another insider tip. Document everything.
Okay.
Keep records of your communications with the board, take detailed notes at meetings, and save copies of any relevant documents. It might sound a little tedious, but trust me, it's worth it.
That's great advice. It creates a paper trail and ensures transparency throughout the process.
It does.
And if things ever get really sticky, you've got the evidence to back up your claim.
Exactly. Now, if you ever feel like you're hitting a brick wall, remember Coral Driscoll, that advocate we mentioned earlier.
Right.
He's a valuable resource who can provide guidance and support, helping you navigate the complexities of RONA's rules and procedures. Exactly.
It's like having a secret weapon
But
in your
remember,
arsenal.
being an active RONA member isn't just about complaining or fighting against things you don't like. It's also about celebrating the things you love about your community and working together to make it even better.
That's such an important point. It's about being a part of something bigger than yourself, about shaping the future of your neighborhood and making it a place where you and your neighbors can
Now
thrive.
that you know your rights, now that you have the tools and strategies to make a difference, we want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
What changes would you like to see in your community? How can you use this newfound knowledge to actively participate and shape the place you call home?
Those are powerful questions, and we encourage you to take some time to reflect on them. Remember, knowledge is power, and you now have the power to make
Believe
a
in
real
you.
difference in your RONA
Go
community.
out there and make your voice heard.
That's it for this deep dive into the fascinating world of the Regency Oaks Neighborhood Association. We hope you've enjoyed the journey, and more importantly, that you feel empowered to create positive change in your community. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep those HOA documents handy.